Hello, this is Mrs. Groves. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. At this point, we have covered section 7.2, which is solving systems of equations using the substitution method. Now we're going to move on to section 7.3, which is solving systems using a third method. Here is your homework assignment, and because of the snow dates, these are the dates. Okay, so if you're in the orange class, okay, this should be the 27th. This homework will be due next class, and if you're in the black class, it will be on the 28th. This is your homework. I really want you to focus on using the elimination method to do these problems and work really hard on the word problems. You should be able to at least get the key information down for each of the word problems. Try to define your variables and the equations. Right? The answer for the odds, remember, in the back of the book. And I'll go over the word problem for number 42 next class. So this is your homework. Make sure to change the dates. And the correct dates for these assignments, remember, are on my website. So now let's go to the third method that we're going to use for solving systems of equations. Okay. The third method to solve systems is called the elimination method. We're going to try to eliminate one variable. So the first thing in order to use the elimination method, our equations, 1, must be in standard form. And I do have a standard form. AX plus BY equals C. We're going to learn that there's 3 flavors. And the first flavor is addition. The second flavor is going to be subtraction. And the third flavor, which we'll cover next class, is multiplication. So what I'd like to do is to go through this problem. And as I go through this problem, I am going to discuss the steps, and then we're going to do this problem here. All right. Now the first thing is we have these 2 systems of equations. These 2 equations that form a system. And what I want you to do is that if we look at the coefficients, this one's 1, this is 5, this is 4, this is -5. Well, we're going to look at the coefficients for x and the coefficients for y. And what I want you to notice is that one variable has opposite coefficients. Okay, so if we add 5 and -5, what do we get? 0. So the y is going to be eliminated. So let's go and see what we do for step 1. Okay, so this is step 1. In step 1, we are going to add the equations to eliminate one variable. And I think you're going to really like this method. Most students like this method because this is going to be so easy. So we have these two equations, and we have our x's, we have them in standard form. We have our x's lined up, our y's lined up, our constants. And we're going to simply add the equations down. So if we add them down, the coefficient here is 1. 1x and 4x is 5x. Okay. Notice that 5y and negative 5 is 0. Y is eliminated. We add down, we get 9 minus 14 is negative 5. Well, that's a really easy equation to solve for. Step 2 is very easy. Step 2 is solve the resulting equation for the other variable. Okay, so we've eliminated y, and we're going to solve for x. That's step 2. So we simply divide both sides by 5, and we get x equals negative 1. So our x-coordinate is negative 1. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? Now, we're going to do step 3. Step 3 says substitute in either original equation to find, and note it says original equation, to find the value of the other variable. So now that's step 3. Okay, so we pick one of the equations. It doesn't matter which of these equations we pick. I think it's easier when you pick an equation that's easy, and this one to me seems it's easier because it has fewer negative numbers. So I'm going to pick x plus 5y equals 9. And I'm going to substitute negative 1 for x. So negative 1 plus 5y equals 9. And now the variable I have for y, so I'm going to solve for y. Again, you know how to do this. It's really easy. I add 1 to both sides. I get 5y equals 10. Divide by 5. And I get y equals 2. So my y-coordinate, if I asked you to write it as an ordered pair, the y-coordinate is 2. So my solution is negative 1 comma 2. Or you can simply leave it this way. X is negative 1, y is 2. And you always check. Step 4. Check the XY coordinates in both original equations. Check the XY in both original equations. Now you can see down here, this is for step 4. Make sure to check your solution by substituting it into each of the original equations. So step 4 is check. So I'm going to go back to the first equation, put little c's in front of it so that you know that you're checking two different equations. X is -1 plus 5, y is 2 equals 9, -1 plus 10 equals 9, 9 equals 9. Cha-ching, it checks. This middle step you don't have to show, but you do have to show the substitution, and you do show that it does actually check. Check the second equation. 4, x is -1, minus 5, y is 2, equals -14. So -4 plus -10 is -14. -14 equals -14. Cha-ching, it checks. So flavor 1 is the addition method. I call it plain vanilla. Easy peasy, simple. So now what I'd like you to do is turn the paper over, and there's an example, number 1. So the first thing you do is you look at the equation, right? And you're going to look and see if you have opposite coefficients. And you notice here, opposite coefficients. Therefore, we're going to add. We're going to do the plain vanilla. Okay, so I put an arrow because we're adding down. That's going to cancel and be 0. We're going to get -6y equals 24. Divide by -6. Y equals -4. Now, we know why. We want to, and I do it usually in a second column, we want to find x. All right. So it doesn't matter which equation you use. In this case, I'd probably just stick with the first one. I want to find x. -8x plus 3. Y is -4 equals 12. Now I'm going to solve for x. You do it. I'll do it. We can check our answers. Oops. Yes, so that's -8x minus 12 equals 12. And that is -8x just coming down. Minus 12 equals 12. Add 12 to both sides. -8x equals 24. Divide by -8. X equals -3. Unless you're asked to, you do not have to write it as an ordered pair. And then I'm going to make sure that this is the correct solution. So I'm going to check both equations. The first one, negative 8, x is negative 3, plus 3, y is negative 4, equals 12. 24 minus 12 equals 12. Cha-ching, it checks. Okay, I want you to show that last step that it checks. Then we're going to go to the next one. We're going to take 8 times x, which is negative 3, minus 9 times y, which is negative 4, equals 12. Now you can put that in your calculator. If you do it mentally, you're probably going to make a mistake. I find it just as easy just to write it down. So this is going to give me negative 24 plus 36 equals 12. And 12 equals 12. Cha-ching, it checks. So that is the addition method, the plain vanilla method, okay, when we have opposite, one variable has opposite coefficients. So I think this is a good time to take a stretch break before we go to the next flavor. And so take a moment, stand up, stretch, and we can start back in about 15-20 seconds. All right, let's rally in. We're going to go over to example number 2. Okay. Flavor number 2. I call this strawberry. All right. How many of you like strawberry ice cream, but you hate those frozen strawberries that they put in it because it hurts your teeth? So I always pick out the strawberries. So we have to eliminate the strawberries. Right. So the subtraction method, okay, I don't want you to do the subtraction method. I'm going to give you a suggestion on slightly a different way to do it. Now look at the coefficients of these variables. What do you notice? What do you notice about the coefficients for x and the coefficients for y? Well, you should notice that one variable, in the case x, has the same coefficients. So we can't add down because 3x and 3x is 6x. Right? So what we're going to do is we could subtract, but students always make a mistake with subtraction. So instead of subtracting, I want you, I'm going to call it AKA, all right? You're going to multiply by -1. Okay, so instead of subtracting the equations, and then you're going to get all confused with the signs, I want you to multiply one equation by -1. So we multiply one equation by -1 to eliminate one variable. Let's see how that works. This equation, we simply 3x minus 4y equals 2. We simply just write that. And this equation, we're going to multiply it by -1, and we're going to distribute that -1. -1 times 3x is -3x. -1 times 2y is -2y. -1 times 26 is -26. Okay. So now, what happens if we add down? 3x minus 3x is 0. X is eliminated. And we get -6y equals -24. 2 minus 26 is -24. So now, this is easy. We can solve that. We're going to solve for y. Divide by -6, divide by -6, and y equals 4. Now that we know what y equals 4 is, we want to find x. So we're going to substitute 4 for y in either equation and solve for the other variable, and in this case it's going to be x. So again, you can use either of the top two equations. I'm going to pick the one that doesn't have any negatives. So I have 3x plus 2. We know that y is 4. So we're going to put that in for 4 equals 26. And we're going to solve 3x plus 8 equals 26. Subtract 8. 3x equals 18. Divide by 3. X equals 6. So our solution, x is 6, y is 4. If we were to write it as an ordered pair, x, y, x is 6, comma, 4. And then we're going to check it in both original equations. 3x is 6 minus 4 times y is 4 equals 2. Okay. 18 minus 16 is 2 equals 2. Cha-ching, it checks. We're going to go check the other equation. Please mark both equations with a C. 3x is 6 plus 2, y is 4 equals 26. 18 plus 8, 26 equals 26. Cha-ching, it checks. Okay. My guess is that you're liking this method a lot better than substitution. And that is what most students, actually most students prefer out of the three methods, graphing, substitution, and elimination. This seems to be their favorite. Okay, so that was that. Now we're going to do number 2. Here, we notice that they have the same coefficients. So we're going to multiply by -1. Now, it doesn't matter which equation you multiply by -1. It's just that naturally, when we think of subtraction, we multiply we think of subtracting the bottom. So that's what I typically do. I usually multiply the bottom equation times -1. We bring this equation over. We don't do anything to it. You multiply it by -1. Make sure that you're doing it correctly. And if you multiply all three of these terms by -1, you should get this. Now we add down. X and 2x is 3x. 6y minus y is 0. It cancels out. 13 and 8 is 24. Divide both sides by 3. X equals 8. And when you're doing these problems, try to stay very organized so that you can see each of the steps. You might want to draw yourself a line, because now we have x, so we need to find y. And pick the easiest equation. I think the top one's going to be the easiest because it doesn't have any negative numbers. So I'm going to replace the x with 8 plus 6. And we do not know what y is. Equals 13. We have to find y. Subtract 8 from both sides. You get 6y equals 6. Divide by 6. And y equals 1. Okay. So notice that work is very easy to follow. And then the final thing you do is you check both equations. So I'm going to check the first equation, always the original. X is 8 plus 6, y is 1 equals 13. Okay. Oops, that doesn't check. I made a mistake. I'm going to have to pause this and come back and fix it. I'll be back in a moment. Well, when I did my check here, 14 is not equal to 13. So I know I made a mistake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly redo my work. and see if you can find where the mistake is. Maybe you've already found it. Okay. So I'm going to go through my steps. And if you had a hard time understanding this the first time, then this will be great, because you'll see me do this again. And I see my mistake. My mistake is a simple arithmetic mistake. 13 and 8 is 21. This cancels out. 3x is equal to 21. Divide by 3. X equals 7. And this is an example of exactly why it is so important to check your work. Find y. So let's see if my answer checks this time. 7 plus 6 times 1. So it checks in the first equation. And let's see if it checks in the second equation. Okay, so that was a very good demonstration of showing you that the check is very important to do. Right? No matter who you are, even the teacher needs to check their answers. So that's it for today. I hope you have fun doing your homework. I think you'll find this method a lot easier than substitution. And next class we'll go on to the third flavor of elimination. Have a nice day.